are. So I do see that a couple people are on, but I am going to go ahead and speak like there's a room full of people, and then go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen here. So if somebody could let me know that they see it, that would be great. Oh, the host has disabled screen sharing.
Of course I did. Hold on. Sorry, you guys. Okay. Okay, you should be able to. My apologies.
That's okay. Can you see that?
Mm-mm.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Does it say FAQs at the Small Business Ombudsman?
I see it says Excel, PowerPoint, Word, Outlook. So it looks like it's your virtual labs.
All right, can you see that PowerPoint?
Not yet.
No. Well, great. I'm really glad that this is all being recorded.
You'd think after a few years we would have it all figured out, right? We'd know exactly what to do, but
I'm going to stop screen sharing and we're going to start over. So let's see. I'm
okay.
wondering if because I have to be out of my normal thing, if it's not going to. Okay, here we go. This might work. Okay, can you see that? Okay, perfect. All right, we'll get started. So let's see here. All right. So, I just want to thank everybody for allowing me to come today. I've been in this position now for about 2 months. However, I was the assistant small business ombudsman for the last 5 years. So,
Caitlin, I'm going to pause you really quick. It's very hard to hear you, and I don't know if it's because of the headphones, but it's very quiet. Huh?
is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll start over.
Thank you.
Apologize for all the tech issues this morning. We work with teams on everything, so Zoom is a little bit out of our norm, and it's never, especially with state government, the tech issues are just prevalent all the time. Um, so anyway, like I was saying, I just came into this position about 2 months ago. But previous to that, I was the assistant small business ombudsman. So I have been in this realm here for about 5 years. If you have any questions throughout, if we want to stop, great. Or if Meryl, if you want to have people write in the chat and then you can read questions to me, that's totally fine. And then if any questions come up from recording, please, all my contact information will be at the very end of the PowerPoint. So please feel free to reach out to me at any point. And you can also find all of it on the website, on the workers' compensation website with the Department of Consumer and Business Services. So we're going to keep it a little bit informal, I guess. But I just wanted to introduce myself and pretty much tell everybody exactly how my area can help small businesses throughout the state of Oregon. So we're going to kind of go through a few things. This is just a quick agenda of what we're going to kind of talk about. As a background, this position was created in 1990 during the Mahonia Hall reform. So I don't know if anybody was in business prior to 1990, but the workers' compensation arena in the state of Oregon was kind of like the wild, wild west a little bit. There was a lot going on. Rates were really high. We had no return to work programs, and it was just not easy. And people were leaving the state of Oregon specific to do business outside of the state of Oregon, kind of in droves. And so in 1999 or 1990, they did this whole reform, and my position kind of came out of that. In fact, mine and I call her my counterpart, but is the injured worker ombud. We both came out of this reform, and our positions are in statute. And we are literally just here to be advocates for small businesses when it comes to workers' compensation. Um, Workers' compensation is kind of a complicated arena for any business. It is very complex, and so we are here to make it as easy as possible and to help in any way that we can. Um, we kind of are going to go through just what our area kind of goes over just on a day-to-day basis. These are the normal frequently asked questions that we can help. And then we can help a lot outside of this, but these are our norms. These are kind of our bread and butter. Biggest one, do I need workers' compensation? We get this phone call pretty much every day, and a lot of the times it has to do with their subjectivity rules. So in statute, specifically 656027, it talks about the subjectivity of workers in the state of Oregon. And pretty much it states everybody who is an employee in the state of Oregon needs to be covered unless they fit this criteria. So there's a list of about 20 something different criteria that can be excluded from workers' comp. So we get a lot of, hey, I'm gonna hire my uncle to help me with my landscaping business. Do I need workers' comp? Or, I'm only gonna have this guy working for like 3 days out of the week. He's only gonna be part-time. Do I need workers' comp? And so we kind of walk through all of the area or all of the different scenarios that can kind of play out if you do need it and don't have it, or if you maybe don't need it, but you're kind of on that cusp. So we'll walk through, what you can do in order to make sure that you're kind of making sure you're safe. So a lot of times people will call us and say, hey, I have a contract with, let's just say the city, and they want me to have workers' compensation, but I'm a sole proprietor and I don't legally have to have workers' comp. So there's certain types of workers' comp coverage that can be beneficial for just contract use or just day laborers or things like that, and that's called an if any policy. So when people call us, we kind of go through that. We go through the traditional policies, or we'll just say, you know what, it doesn't seem like you fit with the subjectivity rules. You don't need workers' comp. So those are every single day we're getting those phone calls. That's the number one phone call that we get. Next question that usually follows is, well, how do I buy it? So I don't know if anybody on here has ever had to purchase workers' comp in other states, but Oregon is a little bit different than some of our surrounding states. So Washington is a completely monopolistic state. They only have state-ran workers' comp. So they do not have they can't go to the private sector to get workers' comp. It's all through the state. Idaho and California both can do either. So they have a state fund, but then they also can purchase privatized workers' compensation. Oregon is 100% private. So you can go to any different workers' company and get insurance as long as you are approved through them. But usually we will suggest that getting an agent to kind of go out to market and find the best rates and get you the best quote is the best practice. If you need help finding an agent, we can go by jurisdiction and help people find agents that are closest to them that can help walk them through the system. Like I said previously, workers' comp is pretty convoluted and complicated. It's not just like buying, car insurance. There's lots of different things that are involved. And so having an agent or somebody in your corner that really understands workers' compensation is incredibly important. And so we do suggest that people kind of work with their agents. And we're here to help provide suggestions. We'll usually just say, hey, here's a list of 6 agents in your area, or depending on the size of the city, go ahead and pick one of those. And we do tend to use what we call free agents, which is agents that can go out to all of the different workers' comp carriers, rather than like a captive agent that can only sell their own specific insurance. But in general, we just say get an agent. It's going to be more beneficial for you to have an agent in your corner than not. Can you help with my dispute? So if anybody here has workers' comp currently, you've probably gone through an audit. So workers' comp at the end of every policy period is going to do some type of audit, whether that be an in-person, what we call field audit, or a desk audit. So an audit, especially if you're over a certain threshold, you might only have to do one every couple years if you're really don't have a lot of premium. But if you have, I think it's over $10,000 in premium, you're going to have one every single year. And if you disagree at any point with this audit, we can kind of help. So there are a few different reasons that people might disagree with their audit. One would be if an independent contractor is brought into their payroll, maybe they don't agree that person should be included. If that costs extra money, if that independent contractor's wages are included in the audit. And so a lot of people disagree. And then the other big one would be classification codes. In workers' comp, every different type of job has a different classification code and a corresponding rate. So just as an example, clerical worker is going to be, I think it's about 4 cents per $100 of payroll. So very, very low. But then you have roofers, right? So a roofer might be $12 per $100 of payroll. Or helicopter logger, whatever the case may be. And so every area has different codes that kind of fit in there. Well, it can kind of get confusing, and not everybody fits squarely into a classification code. So there are disputes that come into play. So we can help kind of navigate that. We can get in contact with NCCI, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, and try to see what classification code is going to work best for the company and where you fit in. And we can kind of have that conversation with the insurer. We try to act as kind of a mediator between the two, between an insurance company and an employer, to kind of get the best resolution. But also, most employers don't speak workers' comp. So we kind of come in and go, we understand what you're saying. However, here's what the employer is saying, and, all of that stuff to kind of come to a resolution that works for both people. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes the employer is just wrong and we can't get there. Sometimes the insurer is just wrong. So sometimes there's not about coming to a middle ground. It's literally about saying, no, you're incorrect. Here's the rules, or here's the law, and then kind of going forward from there.
Caitlin, can I ask you a question really quick?
Of course.
Just about the slideshow. We see the slideshow that says facts with Small Business Ombudsman. We don't see, and I'm wanting to just make sure that you aren't going through slides that we are not seeing, just to check in with you.
Yeah, definitely am. So I'm on like 5 slides now.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that it's probably just not doing what it needs to do.
That's fine.
So I apologize. I'm not, again, the tech issues with this is not ideal. But all of this information is on our website, and I can go ahead, Meryl, and send you the link to our website. This PowerPoint does kind of put it in a different order and a different thing, but everything that I'm talking about as far as being able to see what we do is on the website. This is just a little bit more in depth. So if there are any questions or anything like that, you can call me and I can go through that. So I apologize. Hopefully, maybe in the future I'll come in person and we can all actually see the PowerPoint.
That's great.
I'm not really sure how to fix it at this point.
No, that's okay. No worries. We'll make sure that we can have it available
Okay,
to our members. Yeah. Thank you.
great.
I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, yep. Sorry, I definitely thought everybody could see what I was doing. So, good to know for future that that's not the case with screen sharing on Zoom. Um, so let's see. Actually, I wonder if yeah, it's not letting me screen share. That's probably why. It says my screen sharing is paused, but it won't let me resume it.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I'm
Let's try
not sure.
this again.
Okay.
And then we can kind of get back to where I was. That should be easy. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can see your slideshow. Yeah, we just see the facts with Small Business Ombudsman page.
Okay,
There we go. It's
there we
moving
go.
forward. There we're there.
There we go. I don't know what happened there, but for whatever reason, as soon as I clicked out of the main thing, it paused the screen sharing. Okay, so that kind of the first three are the ones that I just kind of went over. Let's see. And then the next one here is how do I appeal my workers' compensation premium audit? So again, this kind of goes hand in hand with the previous subject, but just a little extra thing here. When somebody calls us and says, we don't agree with our premium audit, we don't agree, we think that, you know, again, independent contractors or classification code, whatever it is, there is a process that can be a little bit more formal than just working with us. So there is a formal way of doing a premium audit dispute. And that's with our Division of Financial Regulation and through Gale Gauge. So Gale Gauge is the only one that does it. And what we normally do is if somebody gives us a call and says, hey, I don't agree, we immediately send their information over to Gale to reserve those appeal rights because we don't want to lose out. You only have 60 days once the appeal or the audit is completed to appeal the audit. And so we don't want to lose that time frame in case you disagree. So we will send over all of the information to Gale and we will, but then in the meantime, while that's going on, we will work to try to get everything handled outside of taking it to a hearing. Because for a couple reasons. One, it's very time consuming. Going to a hearing is a lot of work. It's a lot of time. Mostly you're going to have an attorney, so it can get expensive. And then if you lose, you know, you're kind of out that money and, you know, you've done all of the stuff. So we do try to reserve the appeal rights. However, in the meantime, we try to mediate so that we can end that. So just as an example, right now we are in the middle of a very large audit that there was about 75 subcontractors or independent contractors that got brought into this audit. And it resulted in about $37,000 in excess premium. And the employer really just didn't know because they 1099'd everybody. So they assume that as soon as you 1099 somebody, they're an independent contractor and we're done with that conversation. But that's not the case. An independent contractor does have to fit the definition of an independent contractor. You can't just 1099. So unless somebody is completely free from direction control, they could possibly be brought into an audit as an employee. And so we're working with the insurer right now to kind of help fix this prior to a hearing. And it really does help the employer, but it also helps the insurer. Insurers do not want to take things to hearing. It takes money and time out away from them as well. And so most of the time they're pretty amenable to having those conversations to see what we can do to fix the situation. And in this case, we were able to provide business licenses for all of the different subcontractors that had brought in. So that was able to prove that they were independent businesses and therefore could not be brought into the audit. And we didn't have to go to hearing. So that took their premium down by about $36,000, and we're going to move on. And they know now for next time to gather all of that information and provide it to the insurer when an audit does happen. So it was a win-win for everybody. So we'll go kind of into this next thing. I don't know if anybody here probably has ever heard of this. It's kind of rare. And if you ever get a test audit, can you see on the PowerPoint, or we're good? It's actually moving forward. Okay. So a test audit, most people might not ever get one. They're randomized. And what it is the National Council on Compensation Insurance, which is NCCI. I mentioned that acronym earlier. Is contracted with the state to do what's called a test audit. And a test audit is where NCCI will come in and they will take past information from a past audit and verify that the insurer is auditing correctly. There are audit rules, and so and every insurer has to follow them. And so we contract with them to make sure that insurers are auditing their clients correctly. It can be a little unnerving getting one of these in the mail because it's coming from NCCI, and most people don't know who that is. And so they get this mail and they go, never heard of this person. I'm not going to send them all of my financials, all of my, payroll, all of my information to some random person that I've never heard of. And so we get this call a lot. They give us a call and they say, what is this? Who is this? Do we have to do this? So this is a really common question. And our number and information is on the bottom of that letter, which is why we get the phone call. So pretty much it's just usually a quick conversation of, yes, it's real. No, they're not trying to steal your information. Yes, you have to do it, and kind of so on and so forth. It can change an audit, so good or bad. So if a test audit is done and it's determined that the insurer audited incorrectly, they can, if it's within a certain time frame, redo the audit at the insurer level, and there can result in extra premium or a return of premium. Just completely depends on what NCCI found in their audit. So pretty rare for people to get this more than once within an entire time of owning a business. I mean, if you own a business for 10, 20, 30 years, you might see it a couple times, but most people are only going to see this maybe once. And that kind of goes into NCCI. So like I said, we contract with them to do our test audits, but they also house all of our classification codes. So they're the ones who put together all of the data. They create the classification codes. We adopt those classification codes, and we work with them to edit or change things. There are Oregon-specific classification codes. They also handle a lot of the rate making. So they house all of the data for any kind of claim. So anytime an employer files a claim for a worker, at the end of the year, they're going to have to do what's called a unit stat report and send it all. And NCCI has all of that. They house it, and then they create the experience mods. They do the math on the back end of an experience mod. And an experience mod is a multiplier that goes on to the equation that kind of determines what your premiums are going to be for your workers' comp. And it's pretty much claims cost versus how much money you've paid into it. So if you have, like I said, like a clerical business where maybe you're literally not doing nothing but handling paper, being on the computer, you're probably never going to have a claim. So your experience mod is probably going to be very, very low. But if you're a roofer, experience mods can help keep your costs low if you're a safe company that uses appropriate safety measures, maybe harnesses, things like that. If you keep your claims costs low, then that's going to give you it can be a discount, but it also can add. So just as an example, a roofer that's never had a claim, they might have a 0.8 experience mod. So that's going to take everything down by a little bit. But if you have a really high claims cost, you might have a 1.5. And so they're going to multiply everything by 1.5. And so it ends up being a little bit higher. Only companies who have more than $2,500 in premium qualify for an experience mod. So it's not everybody has one, but it's definitely can be a good tool to determine risk. And it is often used for companies to help create safety programs as well. They'll look at it and go, oh, our experience mod's getting really high. Maybe we need to create some kind of plan. And so they'll usually work with their insurer to maybe do some safety evaluations, or even sometimes OSHA. That was a lot about experience. This is the big one. So our office helps and works with our what we call our employer compliance unit within the workers' compensation division to help non-complying employers get into compliance. So a non-complying employer is any employer that is required to have workers' comp but doesn't have workers' comp. These reports can come into us in many different ways. Now, if anybody ever calls me, our office is 100% confidential. So if anybody calls me and says, hey, I haven't had workers' comp for 10 years and I think I might need it, can I get it? Nobody is ever going to know that you didn't have workers' comp for 10 years. That is between me and my clients. We do not share that information with the workers' compensation division at all, and specifically our employer compliance unit. So if any point you think you might need it and you're like, man, I really think the last 10 years of doing business, I really lucked out that I didn't have any claims, but I think I need workers' comp, you call me. It's between you and I. Nobody is ever going to know. And so but if it gets to a point where it has been reported, it can come in a couple of different ways. I've seen where maybe a competing company realizes that their competition didn't have workers' compensation, so they'll call it in to the employer compliance unit and say, hey, Joe's roofing company doesn't have workers' comp, and they're out here quoting bids for way lower because they don't have to pay for their workers' comp. So those come in, it'll be investigated. Sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're correct. And, if they'll usually say, hey, if you come into compliance within 2 weeks, we don't have to worry about it. But if the other option would be a claim happens. So if a non-complying employer has a claim and a worker goes to the hospital and says, yes, this happened at work, my employer doesn't have workers' compensation, the claim gets reported to the employer compliance unit. There's an entire investigation. A claim is reported to Sedgwick, is our what we call third-party administrator, and they do all of our claims handling. And they get reported, and then there's not really much we can do to make that go away at that point. But what our office can do, and we'll kind of go into, I'm just going to click through all of this so it's all up on the screen. We can do a few things. So if they're within their time frame of the penalty, you can usually get a reduction. And we don't help a lot with this part because you don't need us for this. Every person has 60 days once a penalty occurs to get a reduction on the penalty portion. The claim is what the claim is. There's no reduction to a claim. But for the penalty portion, you can do two things. You can get into compliance. You have to prove that you have active workers' compensation. And then you have to provide payroll for the period of non-compliance. And what they'll do is they'll take all of that information, they'll recalculate it at a lower penalty. So original penalty is going to be twice what your premium would have been based off of the assigned risk rates. And then the reduction will be 1.05 times. So it's almost half. Usually, sometimes it can be even lower than half. And sometimes it's the minimum, which minimum that it can be assessed is $1,000. The minimum that it can be reduced to is $500. Now, If it happens a second time, if there's another period of noncompliance, it goes from twice the premium to $250 a day without coverage. And so this is where we see the really big penalties, because that adds up really, really quickly. We don't want that to happen. So we try very hard that once we know about a non-complying employer, we get them their penalty reduced, and then our office can help get them an agent so it doesn't happen again, all of those things. But once an order goes final, that's usually where myself and my coworker kind of come in, because there's not a lot that can be done once an order goes final. Once a penalty has been assessed, no reduction was requested, maybe it was lost in the mail, whatever the case may be, there's not a lot that can be done once that order goes final. That's kind of where we come in. So we take the entire penalty and we do a few things. We look through the entire record, and we kind of become little like detectives a little bit. So we're going to be looking for anything that we see that might be incorrect. We're going to look and see if you actually even had employees, or maybe they should have been classified as casual labor and therefore outside subjectivity rules. We're going to look and see if everybody who was pulled in as quote unquote employees were actually independent contractors. Maybe we'll look and say, those really should have been owners. They're not subject to workers' comp. We'll also usually have a very in-depth conversation with the employer about how this happened. And sometimes it comes out that an insurance agent steered them in the wrong direction. Maybe an agent told them they didn't need coverage, or maybe the agent said, oh, well, I did XYZ and you should be good, move forward, but maybe they didn't file the paperwork correctly, or whatever the case may be. If you can prove that an agent did that, you can do what's called an errors and omissions case. So an errors and omissions is where the employer would pretty much taken it in an agent to court. I don't know if it's defined as a civil lawsuit, but you would pretty much take them to court for the however much money was lost. So as an example, if you have a $5,000 penalty plus like a $50,000 cost, or a claim, and then also attorney's fees and all of that stuff, you can sue to recoup whatever you lost during that whole case. It's really hard to prove because you have to prove that it wasn't just negligence. You have to prove that an agent did something incorrectly. It doesn't happen a lot, but we have seen it where we have been able to sometimes we can get an agent just to say, oh yeah, that was my bad, and they'll settle and they'll just pay out and you don't have to take them to court. Again, it doesn't happen very often, but it is something that we do look for. The other thing would be classification codes, which we've talked about before. If we disagree with the classification code that was utilized, then we can usually get a reduction to meet the classification. So just as an example, one of my very first cases, we had, it was a RV, I think just like a dealership. And so they sold RVs. Now, for whatever reason, everybody was brought into the mechanic code for these RVs. And so it took, $500,000 in payroll and put it all under the mechanic code. Well, they didn't even have any mechanics. They just had, salesmen and, a much lower classification code. So it took their penalty from about $60,000 down to $7,000. So it was a pretty big difference in classification codes. And that was not in any way, shape, or form the fault of the compliance unit. It was just a miscommunication between the employer and the unit that resulted in that incorrect billing. And so we were just like, oh, hey, like, see, this thing is incorrect, and they were able to fix it. So we work really, really closely with our employer compliance unit to make sure that, one, employers know what they're being penalized for and are very accurately and understandably walking them through the process of what can be done. And then once we do find something that was possibly done incorrectly, we have that conversation with them to see what we can do to fix it. So it's our job to come in and say, no, this is incorrect. Let's do what we can to fix it, and we'll recalculate it. That way the employer is not going to be on the hook for, all of this excess money. And then, like I said earlier, we try to help them find a good agent at the very end to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Um, again, I just want to reiterate that our department doesn't work. We're not actually technically under the Workers' Compensation Division. We are under the Director's Office of the Department of Consumer and Business Services. We act as almost like an independent agent, kind of. Our services are completely free of charge, and we are here to help the employer. So the reason they house us under that area is so that we don't have to be under the same rules as the Workers' Compensation Division. We don't have to report non-complying employers. We don't have to report somebody doing things incorrectly. We're here to fix the issues that employers are having and educate so that things don't happen again. So that's the primary thing that our office does. And our whole goal, and sometimes that still means that employers are going to owe money. Like, this is not an end all be all. We're not a quick fix. Sometimes you're still going to owe money, but hopefully with our help, you might owe a lot less. And if you still owe money, we can also get everybody in touch with our accounts receivable department to get palatable payment plan to get things paid off, so it doesn't go over to Department of Revenue, doesn't become a big collection thing, all of that stuff. So that is in a nutshell what we do and who we are. But we do a lot of other things too. So a lot of times we'll get all the conversation or questions that come our way about just small businesses in general. And we are a good resource to kind of get you to where you need to go. So sometimes people just don't know and they'll give us a call. And like just yesterday, I had a question about land use. I don't know anything about land use, but we're able to figure out who to get you in contact with. And we try really hard to do soft handoffs. So I know that a lot of people who work with state government say, well, I've been on the phone for 50 minutes and then I get on the phone, they say this is the wrong place, and they give me a number and they send me on my way. We try really hard not to do that. So our goal is, if you called the wrong place, we're going to call the right place and say, hey, this person called us, this is their number, this is the issue that has arisen, please give them a call back, and then we ask for follow-up. So we try really hard to be that soft handoff to make sure people get to where they actually need to be. Doesn't always work that way. Some people get our phone, we call them and they go, we don't care what you have to say, ombudsman, and they tell us, to have them call the office, and that's just the way that it is. But most people are pretty amenable to having that conversation. That's pretty much us in a nutshell. Oh, and I did want to also mention, our name is Small Business Ombudsman, but we will never turn away a business. If any business calls us and has questions, I'm not going to answer the phone and say, well, do you have more than 50 employees? And then if you say, yeah, I'm going to hang up. I'm not going to do that. We will help any business that gives us a call. It's just, in general, small businesses are what need the most help because they don't have a big team. Maybe they don't have attorneys, they don't have CPAs that can sit there and do everything with them. Whatever the case may be, we're here to kind of help with that. But again, we'll answer questions that anybody asks. Just happens to be small businesses more often than not. So, yep, that's me. I don't know if there's any questions. I am free to answer anything that anybody would like to know. But if you don't want to ask on here, or you're just watching this later down the road in a recording, here's all my information. Feel free to give us a call or send me an email. Our goal is to get back to everybody within 24 hours. So again, we're about 100% with that goal. Don't call me on a Friday at 5. Expect me to call you at Saturday at 8 a.m. Not going to happen. But Friday at 5 and then maybe Monday at 8 a.m. I could probably do that. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Caitlin. I don't have any questions in the chat. Does anyone on have any questions? Okay.
I'm gonna
Doesn't
take that
seem
as a
like
no.
it. Yeah. Thank you for coming. I'll make sure that the spreadsheet and not spreadsheet, slideshow and information and the recording is passed on to our members and your contact information. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's great information to have.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. And if you ever want me to come in person, I'm only in Kaiser, so I'd be happy to drive out to that area.
Perfect. That sounds
Thank you.
great. Thanks, Caitlin. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Bye now.